Well, hello, everyone. I am in here this week with Diane Ducarme. Thank you for being here with us today.
With so much pleasure, Melissa.
Yes, and you are from New Zealand. I obviously I've heard you on other shows before. I've had a pleasure of learning a little bit about you and your gifts and what you do around this topic, migraines. And I'm just so excited that you came in and you're going to share this real important information with my listeners here.
Yes, yes. And indeed, I'm based in New Zealand, and I am actually a New Zealand citizen as of yesterday as well. And I'm originally from Belgium. This is where your audience might hear the funny accent. My mother tongue is French, but not French from France, French from Belgium, which is just slightly different in the accent. Yeah.
Okay. All the things that, yeah, like I said, I haven't traveled overseas. I have never been to Europe. So I'm fascinated and it's definitely on my bucket list one day.
Very good.
Yes, yes, absolutely. So speaking of Eastern and Western, because I know this
Hmm.
is your approach, and this is what I
Hmm.
love bringing here, because Eastern and Western approach to medicine, there's good and better with both, as you can
Hmm.
probably agree. I'm all about looking for the root cause, and that's what really drew me to bring this topic on, because this is your passion as well, is really figuring out the why. So if you want to explain maybe a little bit what got you into this? So what drew you into this area of health?
Because probably it's an area of wealth of health where the East and the West make the least sense when you look at it from an outside perspective. So in the West, we're going to say that migraine is a neurological disorder for which the only answer is to medicate for a lifetime. And it is because it's genetic, it's 5% of boys and girls. And then this incredibly bizarre thing happens. The prevalence triples to quadruples for women at puberty. Yet
Mm.
pure hormonal migraines, pure hormones related migraines, um, do not account for that delta. And so it's an area where Western science is a bit blocked, if I may say very kindly. Um, and um, and whereas in the East it's completely different. In the East, it is a non-event because they never look at the migraine itself. They look at what else is coming alongside, and if you fix what's coming alongside, you no longer have migraines.
Okay.
And so they're really all about the root cause. And once you get to the root cause of it, you. So the West is going to try to mute the pain, silence the pain. The East is going to try to listen to it. And
Mm.
when I was
Yeah.
seeing these things, next to each other, I thought it didn't compute, it didn't make sense. And it started to completely passionate me.
Yes, yes. I love that. Yes. And it's so important because migraines, like a lot of things that we may have experience or suffer with, is a symptom.
Hmm.
Right.
Yes.
Our bodies were not created. We weren't put here on this earth to suffer from extreme headaches.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah,
absolutely.
there has to be a cause.
Yeah. And from the onset, I really want to maybe talk about this pain. And migraine is a full body experience. And we
Mm.
know that from the West, we know that migraine can come with head pain, yes, in most of the cases, but sometimes not. They
Mm.
can be silent migraines. It's a minority. And it comes with other symptoms such as vomiting, dizziness, aura, so visual disturbances like dots and prisms in the vision. It
Mm.
can come with a blurred vision. It can come with trembling sensations in the hands, in the arms, in the legs. Can come with half paralysis of the body, and so people are going on the floor. Can sometimes come in form of what is called migraine attacks, where the person is going to be losing their eyesight and falling on the floor to the extent they need to go to the emergency room. And they themselves will think they had a stroke because it does look like a form of a stroke in that kind of migraine attack.
Mm.
And so it has a lot of colors and a lot of facets, and all the way to people having dizziness, vertigo on a constant basis and not being able to focus properly. And so it's a big umbrella. yes, of massive pain that exactly like you say, you're not born to be living with. You're not created to live a life of pain like that.
Yeah, yeah. So what is the typical, what age demographic? You mentioned women because in hindsight, of the things that I hear, we hear of friends, family members. I will say I don't have any family members that suffer from migraines, so nobody close to me, but definitely within the population of people that I'm around, it does seem to be more common for women.
Yes, yes, and
Yeah.
that's quite striking. So it's 5% of boys and girls, and at puberty, we're gonna have 18 to now we talk about 22% of women in the US.
Mm,
It's 1 in 5 women versus 1 in 20 men. And
mm,
then around perimenopause, so 40 and above, there's again a massive shift of some people having used to have headaches in their life and now have debilitating migraines. Some people who used to have them episodically and have them chronically. Some people for whom it reduced in frequency and severity. And some people, it's not less, it's not more, but it's just changed in nature. So again, a
gotcha.
huge transition of again symptoms again,
Mm-hmm.
like you say, again symptoms. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what is the well, yeah, this is fascinating because this is all the things we talk about. And I know you're going to dive into the connection with diabetes, which I'm about to learn a lot about as well. So like I was mentioning, I'm not that close, even though on the outside I'm aware of people, women suffering with
Yeah.
migraines, but I'm not close to people who have migraines. So I guess I don't really know what the day-to-day is like, what sort of treatment the average person is getting. What's offered right now to ease?
A
Yeah.
lot of that's a great question, and what is offered right now is a series of different medications, most of which, I would say 95% of which, have been engineered for other diseases
Mm,
because migraine was not looked at like that. And accidentally through trials or through just, medical, people, doctors trying to fix other things, they
mm,
found, okay, these medications can also help for migraine. So let's give a few
mm.
very concrete
Okay.
examples. In the case of, for example, cardiovascular issues, this is how we realized that triptans could also help with migraines.
Okay.
You're having depression and migraine are highly, highly correlated.
Mm,
If you have, chronic migraines, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to have depression. But if you have depression, you're also more likely to have migraines. And from a
mm,
genetic standpoint, it's hard to know which is giving which. For women themselves, it's sometimes hard to know. Like, I'm not depressed, but the doctor asked me the question, and I said, "But my life is so awful. I feel depressed."
mm,
But I'm not, it's not my personality. That's not who I am fundamentally. But am I? They start to have self doubt. So antidepressants will be oftentimes prescribed, not necessarily because the person is depressed, but because it has seen possibilities of improvements. And so there's a lot of anti-epileptic drugs or ergots, etc., that have been designed to address other diseases. And when
mhm,
applied to migraine, we're showing some level of efficacy as well for migraines. It's
mm,
only until December 2019 that the FDA approved a new form of treatment called anti-CGRP that will try to block the message that goes essentially from the gut to the brain to express pain. And so
mm,
that's the first time that we're doing that. Yeah, with data shows, look, there's different sets of data. If you look at the amount of people online exchanging on medications, if you just take a Facebook group of migraines, you will see walls and walls of complaints with sort of trying a lot of medications and not being helped. And oftentimes they will also have medication cocktails. So
mm,
they will medicate their way out. The medication are painkillers.
mm.
I'll repeat, the medication is a painkiller. So it tries to mute a message.
Gotcha. Right.
That would assume that the message doesn't make sense. If we take a simple analogy, you have a little boy, he's 3 years old and he's taking his shower for the first time. He's super proud. His mom is proud. On the way out, he jams his finger. He cries.
Mhm.
The mom goes to the doctor and says, my child cries. He says, I'm sorry, here are some earplugs. You put one to the left, one to the right. You should be able to get back to your daily chores. She does
Mhm.
that. It works, except the child starts to do what? Cry louder and ask for
Mhm.
more help.
Yeah.
And until he starts banging on the door. And the doctor says, oh, now we have a Bose headset with noise canceling. And so what I try to
Mhm.
mean is, medications have their place. It's also super important to go to the doctor to get properly diagnosed. Super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Super important to exclude things. I come from a family of doctors. I highly respect the profession. It is important.
Mhm.
For 10, 20, 30, 40 years, you're going to have to survive. And so you're going to have to take the medications. But fundamentally, if you take a step back, why is my brain in pain? What is it trying to
Mhm.
say?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Stop and ask questions for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because I'm excited to hear how you specifically are helping people and some tips and some true long-term treatment options that I know that you're aware of. Let's trip over here to diabetes related because tell me the connection. And you said that it's something, and it sounds like it might be new because I don't even know within the diabetes space. I'm very much involved in, obviously as a coach and within the community, that I haven't heard diabetes and migraines in the same sentence.
It's very, very, very
So,
true. You know
yes.
that I have done podcast on ADHD and migraines and
Mm,
IBS and migraines and leaky gut and migraines and the depression, and there's a lot of prevalence and really high comorbidity with a lot of things. With type 1 diabetes, the incidence is half the normal population, which is
mm,
completely fascinating. So it
mm,
means that whereas sort of 18 to 22% of women, let's say one fifth, 20% of women suffer from migraine disease, in the type 1 diabetes population, it will be half that, 10%,
mm,
which is really interesting.
mm.
Yeah, fascinating, fascinating. And it's not extremely documented, but the interval of confidence is 90%, 95%. So it's quite a very good, like it's a solid fact. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. And it might even be more of an impact, and because you already mentioned hormones.
Yes.
So if you're a woman like myself, type 1 diabetes, um, over 40, when perimenopause begins, when our hormones are starting to shift. So somebody maybe with diabetes at an earlier stage, is suddenly the migraines are becoming much more relevant and much more of a problem.
Completely.
Where's the connection? So how is this more relevant for those of us living with diabetes? Why? And I'm full of questions. I'm just fascinated by this. Yes, this is good.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of root causes that sits below the migraine. So if you really look at my brain is expressing pain, what is it expressing it about? If you think of a woman like a factory versus a man, a woman is a factory that is going to produce a lot of life matter, life force. She's going to produce 23 to 28 liters of menstruation in her life, like
Mhm.
23 to 28 liters. That's a massive amount. The man doesn't
Mhm.
go through that. She's
Right.
also going to produce children potentially. She has the ability to produce children. So again,
Yeah.
a man's going to produce sperm, which is extremely important and relevant in society. The woman is going to take on the work and produce the whole child. So if you were to say, oh, can I have an analogy with two factories? You'd say, oh, maybe the woman factory is a car manufacturer and she manufactures an entire car. And maybe a man is an envelope. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. It's just that
Mhm.
what we do, how we fabricate matter. Like if you take a woman who's had two children, she's going to produce 30 kilograms of physical matter.
Mhm.
Men never go through that. So it's a different
Right.
factories.
Mhm.
From that moment, if you think of the brain as the dashboard of the factory, where the brain is connected to all parts of the body, the
Mhm.
female brain is different. It is different.
Mm.
And sometimes we have these
Mm.
jokes online that circulate where you see the brain of a man, there's an on off button, and then the brain of a woman with lots of buttons.
Mhm,
Think of
mhm.
that dashboard. A lot of things can go wrong. And a lot of things can go wrong, especially in perimenopause. And this is where the science, it's not very strong there. So for example, just the stats on the prevalence of migraines in perimenopause is not so clear because it's winding down and it's just very complicated. And even if you look at the type 1 diabetes and perimenopause and migraine, it's just not there. But when you look at the root cause, you can start to really understand why does that prevalence increase and how is the body actually changing. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah, it sure does. Yeah. So has there been any sort of research on the connection with, our body? Obviously, our pancreas no longer produces islet cells to give us the insulin we need. That's the short and sweet of what, that we experience every day. But there's a lot of other hormones going on as well. Is there a connection with that whole endocrine system that might be related to what's going on with, the potential for migraines?
Yeah, completely, completely. So there's a lot of root causes that can stem, and again, if you think of the brain as a dashboard, a lot of lights can go on when there are problems.
Mm.
And so, if you talk about, for example, hormones, the light can go on, when these are not produced in enough quantities or well enough, or are dropping or rising too quickly. Then the brain is going to manifest. And so this is where, with type 1 diabetes, your community is incredibly disciplined, incredibly
Mm.
living within a range of longevity, optimizing for every single decision, and always taking the pulse, which is not the rest of the world, right? Especially now with so many
Mm.
metabolic diseases, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And so this is, to me, clearly marking why. Like, it's not just that the genes are different, because I don't that we don't know, but it's really like how within guardrails you live your entire life and how you're able to master a number of your metabolic metrics and live
Hmm.
in within guardrails. Now, at perimenopause, things become a lot more challenging, and you talk in some of your podcasts about HRT. You talk about
Hmm.
like how things just suddenly shift, and because you know your body so well, and so it's in
Hmm.
those shifts that the migraine prevalence can increase. Yeah. So
Nice.
if we talk about the hormones in particular, um, in traditional Chinese medicine, for example, if you take the East version of it, in the East, they look at systems. And so they don't look at the hormones in isolation. They look at the hormones as part of a system. And the
Mm.
system that is mostly in charge of them, well, there's two systems with, the pancreas and with the liver. So the liver system is one massive system that relates to hormones. And the liver system, when you say, I speak a lot of languages, I love languages. I speak seven, but it's almost, I only speak two. I speak West. And when you say in West liver, you always designate the piece of flesh at the right side of your rib cage, just under your rib cage. Yeah, it always means that.
Hmm.
When you say liver in Mandarin, which is gan, you don't mean that. It doesn't mean that. Even Google Translate will translate it like that. It doesn't mean that. It means liver and gallbladder and all of your female hormones and all of your
Mm.
mood hormones. It's going to mean a lot of your brain, specifically your temples, your eyebrows, the top of your head,
Mm. Mm.
and your eyes, your vision. It's going to mean irrigation of your tendons. It's going to mean collagen and ability to have sort of flesh production of liquids that allow for your body to function really well, ability to detox. And so when they say GAN, they mean all of that. They never
Mm.
mean the liver alone. They say the liver alone, if you cut it and you put it to the side, you dissect it, it just doesn't do anything anymore. It's lost all of his magical power because he's part of the system. Oh, yes, there's also breast and uterus as part of that system. And
Mm.
so let's imagine someone who's not type 1 diabetes, a naughty person, a naughty person, um, and they are living a life full of sugar, of fat, and all of that, they're going to overcharge their liver. From the
Mhm.
moment they overcharge their liver, they intoxicate their liver. Okay. So they're going
Mm-hmm.
to start to have headaches and then migraines potentially, or migraines very suddenly, because the inflammation of the liver organ is going to send an inflammation pain to the brain. And so the brain's going to start to complain. Now, if you look at the West for a minute, of course, in the West, we would agree if you intoxicate your liver, aka you have a massive feast where you overdrink way too much alcohol, you're going to have a hangover. So the inflammation of your liver can always be felt inside the brain. Now, if we go back to someone who doesn't eat really well or doesn't, and I don't mean that in a condescending way, because a lot of the people who have migraine disease actually live, they've cut on chocolate, they've cut on wine, they've cut on cheese,
They've made some changes.
they
Yeah.
made a lot of changes, not because they
Yeah.
had a monitor and they had a roadmap for it, but because intuitively they're like, whoa, 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 this is starting to give me migraines, but not
Mm.
always. Because depending on the time of their cycle, their liver is going to digest these foods better or worse. So it's going to,
Mm.
there's going to start to need to rely on their intuition. Now, if they go to the doctor and they have a lot of migraines and they've cut back on wine, cheese, chocolate, what is going to happen is that they will get medicated. If they get medicated, they add toxicity to the liver, which adds inflammation in the brain.
Mm. Mm.
And so that will be one type of migraines. Now, if you go to perimenopause, in the perimenopause in the West, and I like to go east-west a lot, if
Mm-hmm.
you go into the West, the liver organ is going to shrink by up to 44%. So it's going to lose 44% of its volume.
Oh,
So your ability to detox, ability to produce hormones, ability to
oh,
produce collagen, your
interesting.
breast, all of that starts to become a lot weaker.
Mm.
And so then you need to double down on stimulating that liver and say, hey, dear liver, I love you so much. We're going to continue to power through for the long run. I'm going to adore you, cherish you. And you see that a lot in women in perimenopause. I mean, almost 100% of the women I've ever worked with, by the time they hit perimenopause, they will stop drinking. They're like, completely not worth it. I can feel I'm just not digesting that. And so people
Yeah.
will start to make informed choices, but still it's waters that become a lot harder to navigate.
Yeah, yeah. You're bringing up some great tips here. I love this. And you obviously practice lifestyle medicine, which is what you're already talking about before I even had a chance to kind of dive into it. So how do you, now that we kind of have that correlation, we understand that primarily women tend to be suffering with migraines more, and how it can be more more relative in the diabetes community. And you bring up something too, because it's such a metabolic the metabolic disease. I don't know what it is in Europe, to be honest. I don't know the stats. I just know here in the US, it's 60 to 70%, maybe even higher of the population of all ages. And obviously our body's crying out. And then you tap on, well, and this is without type 1. These are people, women, midlife. There's a high degree of diagnosis of pre-diabetes and type 2 for this same population that you're talking about. And I'm willing to bet that tag along things like migraines and the lifestyle that's kind of encompassing those symptoms. So it's no wonder. It's no wonder, and it's a sad state. So what are you doing in your practice, and how do you help people? I think the first step, like you say, is realizing it, and then finding people that are willing to maybe look for their own root cause and to make some changes. So what does that look like?
So it looks like a first is 100 questions,
Mhm.
understanding. I hear you have
Understanding.
migraines. I want to know about your migraines. I want to know
Mhm.
their frequency, their severity, their location, the time of the day, the time of the cycle. All of that is extremely relevant. And I need to know what else is going on. Do you actually have type 2 diabetes? Do you have a leaky gut? Do you have
Mhm.
irritable bowel syndrome? Do you
Mhm.
bloat easily? Do you have trembling sensations? Do you have a dry skin? Do you have an oily skin? Do you
All
have
those
discharge in
things.
your
Yeah.
eyes in the morning? Do you lose your hair? Do you do you put on weight easily? Do you have a lot of weight in your belly, a distension of the belly area? Do you have sore breast? Do you have heavy menstruation? Do you have migraines during your menstruation? Do you lose blood clots? And so all of that is coming together in 100 questions. So I'm just basically questioning the body. I'm asking the body, dear body, where is it that you're trying to signal the problem? And usually,
Mm.
because it's a domino effect of systems, once there's one system that fell down, a lot of other systems will follow. And this is where it starts to become more complicated for the person to be intuitive and rely on their intuition. So that's the
Mm.
step one. Step two is wonderful. Step two, you have now a mirror of step two. I have actually created my own app. It's called Migraine Heroes, that goes together
Uh-huh.
with the podcast of stories of migraine heroes. And now there's a freemium. And I love to say that because I've had, Melissa, so many people saying, I prayed for so much for an answer like this one, and I feel you were the answer to my prayers, because I've, suffered for so long. I also meet a lot of people who have massive financial struggle because for so many years they were not able to complete university, not able to work, or were fired from their work because of the migraines,
Right. Yes.
massively conditioned their life and family. So from there, you can download the app free of charge. It's called Migraine Heroes. It's really, really cool. Think of it as a massive design that has been done by. It's a work of love of a lot of women, and then you can have an automated plan where everything's going to be automated for you, and we indicate you how to add foods all the way to an escalation of different plans where you get more and more human support in order to undo the imbalances inside of your body that trigger your migraines until your migraines
Okay.
just go silent. Your genes don't change, but you get to no pain. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Oh, it sure does. It sure does. So definitely the first step is definitely learning
Yes.
all those things that are impacting it or triggering the
Yes.
migraines. And then, yeah, I'm definitely going to link your app here because yes, I do know that you have, I love that. The Migraine Heroes. Is that an app or a podcast?
Both.
Both.
It's
Okay.
So
I
it
thought, bet you had a podcast as
started,
well. Okay.
yeah, it started as a podcast because I was fascinated by the woman I was meeting. They had lives I had never heard of because
Mm.
women who suffer from migraine disease, they will be really good at faking that everything's fine. You can't see it physically unless you're very close to them, and day to day you
Yeah.
can pick up really small nuances, but they will no longer share it because they feel ashamed, they feel there's no solution, they feel bombarded with ideas and suggestions from people
Hmm.
who don't know and are well intended but don't know. And so they really live in isolation. And so I loved to tell these stories that are incredible. And so we talk about all of their life before, which is just nothing short of being a warrior, um, until they're able to learn. And
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that you say that they learn. That's what we teach them. They learn, and they're like, oh my God, this is
Hmm.
so special. If I can
Yeah.
read you, it
Oh,
inspires.
please. Yes, I was hoping you would have at
It's
least one
it's
story to share. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a quote I just got this morning, and it made my heart melt. And the woman
Mm.
says, "Just hello, once again, feeling a deep gratitude towards you all for doing the
Mm.
work that you are. I never could have imagined I could live my life without constantly thinking about when the pain would
Mm.
come, or to
Mm.
have to come to terms with constant medication. Thanks to you, I'm living it, and I can imagine it as a future. This makes so much sense to me, and I've been really enjoying digging into different literature about healing with foods." And with sort of east and west combination. And
Yes.
there was just this morning, it's gorgeous, and it's really the fuel that keeps me going.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's really the only real reward. Like the whole organization or the way it's structured, is doesn't have an intent to make profits. It has an intent to. It's not a charity. I pay everyone that works with me, but the only goal, like the data is not given to XYZ for whatever purpose. It's the only intent is, what? It doesn't make sense. People suffer. It's like what the fights that you bring, Melissa, every day to help
Hmm.
people combat and
Hmm.
live the best life they can. And this is exactly what it's designed to do. Yeah.
That's exactly what we're designed to do, right? To be here to
Yeah.
help and to share our gifts. And yeah, and the rewards come.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. They just naturally do. And I totally, I get it. That is the best feedback when we hear from people that have found success working with us. And there's nothing
Yeah,
better, nothing
yeah.
better.
And so
Absolutely.
for me, that's the example of a migraine hero is like for 20 years, you medicate and you're like, oh my God, and you
Yeah.
have hope and you pick yourself up and it's hard.
Hmm.
People living in every single day pain, like losing everything that is dear to their heart in their life. And
Hmm.
yet they, once more, they knock on my door. And when they do, they have just no hope. And we debrief. I also do calls where we debrief on their test together. And, oftentimes they'll have tears. I encourage to come with husbands if you take the meeting after
Mm,
the test with partners, because I think the partners, they also suffer in a very different way. They
sure.
have a lot of compassion and a lot of
Sure,
struggle.
absolutely. That is so good. Yeah, yeah. It's healing for everybody involved for sure.
Mhm,
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing worse than seeing somebody we love suffer
mhm,
and to
mhm,
feel, almost helpless, right? Yeah,
mhm.
because we're not really in it. Really, really good. So, what about, can we talk foods?
Yes,
You
absolutely,
know, it's
absolutely.
funny. This is my own conception, my only, not conception, kind of perception is the role of the mineral magnesium,
Mhm,
because I know how relaxing and healing it is.
mhm,
And I've heard vitamin D is another, obviously
mhm,
that's a hormone, how they can help. And I don't know if there's truth to this. It's things I've read,
mhm.
things I've kind of made with my own thinking, knowing how powerful these minerals and vitamins are, if they do play a role.
Absolutely. So there's a number of supplements and a number of minerals that have been proven scientifically to help with quite robust and, well documented studies. Magnesium is absolutely one of them,
Mm,
and completely worth trying. Of course, um, be mindful. What is really important is to be mindful that the type of magnesium that you take is one that you tolerate.
mhm,
If the magnesium is giving you a more runny stool,
right.
so like loose bowel movements, that you need to wipe a lot, it probably does more harm than good. It does some good, but it takes away along the way. So
Okay.
find so a complete yes to magnesium, and find the type that your body digests. That digests the best, and that's
Okay.
quite personal.
Hmm. Hmm.
There's also, you did mention vitamin D, absolutely, that helps a lot as well. There's a couple of others. There's riboflavin, which is
Okay.
vitamin B2.
Hmm.
There is, as for some people, vitamin B12, especially if they're vegetarian.
Okay.
There's one that is really interesting. I like to take it from pollen, for example. I find it's really nice to eat pollen. It's delicious, and it's a great source of B12.
Oh, that's
Um,
fun.
what else? There's a couple more. Yeah, it's gonna come back to me. There's just a couple of supplements like that that can help. Now, because they're so complicated, if the domino effect started to fall down, all of the, let's put it this way, all of the people for whom I worked, they tried every single medication for most, and they've tried all of the supplements for most. It still
Hmm.
works if you manage to use it early. So try as early as you can, and if it works, stick with it until you feel
Hmm.
comfortable. And once your tank is full, you can stop it, because sometimes if you overdo it on something that helps, it can start to hinder. Does that make sense?
Okay. It does. Yeah.
If your
Yeah.
bucket is empty, fill your bucket. Once it's full, don't overflow it, because then
Hmm.
you create something else that your body will then complain about.
So true. So true. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That word balance that we throw out there, that it's so difficult to get, but but it is all about paying attention to just how your body's responding to
Yeah.
whatever sort of vitamin or supplements that you're adding in. That's a good point. Yeah.
There's a couple, they're gonna come back to my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about iron
Um,
or zinc? Do they
yeah.
play a role? Can I know how
Less,
all?
less. I mean, iron. Yes, no, it's true. Iron, if you're anemic, and by anemic, I actually want to push it much further. if you do not have enough blood volume in your body, you will have more migraines. And let me explain how it works with common sense. Let's imagine that for your body to be full, you need 5 liters of blood. Yeah,
Mm.
4 to 5 liters. And let's imagine for some reasons, historical reasons, for example, you had a copper IUD, you were bleeding a lot, you have super heavy menstruation. You have come into birth and lost a lot of blood. Or you donate your blood, you will not have 5 liters, you have a bit less. And when you have a bit less, your brain starts to be in competition with your digestive system. So now let's imagine I had that cheese, wine, chocolates that I was referring to. Now my
Mhm.
digestion process is going to consume a lot of the blood. And so my brain might not be as irrigated. And so my brain is going to say, Mayday, Mayday. If you do that and you take a triptan, the triptan is going to constrict the blood vessel, force the
Mm.
blood back into your brain, and you're going to feel without pain, but probably a bit spacey because the blood sent back is a blood that is in the middle of digestion. And
Mm.
so anemia will contribute to the difficulty of reproducing your blood volume,
Mm. Okay.
and therefore can completely contribute to migraines. If you have that, you will see other symptoms creep into your life. You will see a lot of sugar cravings before, which, not good. But still, sugar cravings before menstruation, when you're stressed or when you're really tired, combined with quite a bit of dry skin. And then that's how you know. So an iron can, in that instance, help. Yes.
Okay.
There's a few other ones like coenzyme Q10,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
it improves cellular energy production.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming back to me. Omega 3. Omega
Oh,
3 is also a
yes.
great fat
Mm-hmm.
for the brain,
Mm-hmm.
and we need
Mm-hmm.
fat for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
One that is sometimes recommended, but I would wait for more science, is melatonin. Because
Interesting.
melatonin, even though it looks like a hormone, it's a synthetic hormone, from people who suffer from migraine disease, I can see that the way the body expels it is not so clear. It's very clear how the melatonin enters the body. It's very clear what it does. It's not clear when it's done its job, where does it go versus natural melatonin. My
Mm.
hypothesis is that it ends up in the large intestine and creates a chronic form of inflammation that can create chronic constipation and chronic dizziness. So if you
Interesting.
find yourself very dizzy, yes, and I tend to trust people who suffer from migraine disease a lot more because they have a fire alarm, and the fire alarm says, none of that. Please don't do that again. Our inability sometimes to be able to listen to that, but sometimes with your
Yeah.
intuition, yeah, you have to find a way to fall asleep naturally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that one
Yeah.
is also said for migraines as a supplement. I would say wait for more research. The other
Okay.
ones have many, many years of research that confirmed and
Mm-hmm.
confirmed and confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
Melatonin for me, if you have dizziness, is something to use with caution and discuss with
Okay.
your doctor again.
Really good to know. That is really good to know. You mentioned something that just kind of sparked me when you mentioned omega 3s. This generation, my generation, we grew up where it was fat free. Avoid the fat. Fat would make you fat. That was the way we were taught. That's the fear we had. No longer. I mean, I can speak for myself, and this is definitely when I encourage my clients when I work with them. We need those healthy fats. Omega-3 is one of the supplements that I recommend as well, just to get those omega. Because we do, even if we've got a little bit of processed food kind of sneaking in here and there, it's always good to kind of have that extra omega-3. A really good source is real important. But that's interesting. That's another connection that can be kind of tied back to women.
And you know
Yeah.
what I want to share is, because we were having such really high rate of success, and we look forward to put a board of doctors, etc. But on migraines, I did a class of neuroscience at Harvard online because I was trying to find, okay, why is that working so well? Like, how can I explain it back into like East and West, navigate those two languages really well?
Mhm.
In Western science, we've discovered that, I mean, we know for some time that for a neuron to go really fast, you need to it can either be really, really long, but then it's not very practical for a design perspective of the human anatomy. So if you were having a really long neuron, you'd be essentially a worm, because that needs to be a straight line. So for the body to have all of these small parts, you have really small neurons, but then you still need to transmit the information fast. It's not like I can think that I'm going to move my arm and then wait for 10 seconds and then it moves. It needs to go a lot
Yeah.
faster.
Mm-hmm.
And the way to conduct that neuron is like with myelin, and myelin is essentially animal fat that wraps
Mm-hmm.
around the neuron to make it go
Mm-hmm.
faster. So a
Mm.
big yes to that. So yes,
Yes.
omega-3 is really, really important for
Oh,
that
I love
reason.
learning. Yes, yes. I love
Yes,
it. I love it when things stack on top of each other. The things that
exactly.
I talk about and, try to do myself and realizing that there's more benefits. There's n more reasons why.
Yeah.
So your treatments and if you want to share, if you have a success story that you want to share with us, but sounds to me like whole food diet, supplementing when it's needed, but it really is about looking at the client, the patient, and assessing where they are. And and there's obviously some eliminations going on with their diet and their lifestyle, and then adding things back in that are going to more help supplement them. It's very similar to coaching. It's really interesting. And I love this model because it really is looking at the body, the person, because we're so individual. And I'm willing to bet that no two approaches have worked for two different people, right? Because right?
Completely.
Yeah, I love
It
that. Yes.
it takes me, there's now three of us working, and it takes me a year and a half to train a person. A year and a half. It's that complicated.
Mm,
And so I try to, in the free version of the app and automated, I try to give the biggest advice so that people can catch themselves fast. And like, if you catch yourself fast, if you just have, for example, just quote unquote, pre-menstruation migraine, go on the app, track, solve it fast as you can. Because the moment you're going to not listen to your body, the moment you're going to break down more parts in your body, the more it's going to be a lot more complicated to help you.
mm,
It's always feasible. I mean, I would say yes, almost always feasible, but it's a lot more complicated. And I say almost because in the case of, for example, a trauma, if someone has had massive abuse, physical, mental abuse in childhood, we know from the West that there's an alteration of the vagus nerve. And if
mm,
there's an alteration of the vagus nerve, the signaling from the body to the brain needs help to be repaired. It's equally, if not even more
mm.
important for someone like that, but it requires also polyvagal theory and
Okay.
help in that on that
Yeah.
front.
Wow,
Yeah.
powerful. Yes. So
Mhm.
important. Yes. Do you have a short example that you can share? A
Oh
patient that you've
yes,
worked at? I would love to just
yes.
hear of a
Oh,
before and after.
yeah, yeah. Oh, I'll give you a couple before and after. The one of the first women I helped, her name was Jessica, and still her heart is with me. Jessica was having migraines every single day. She had had a concussion, and she was in pain every single day. She
Mm,
had to stop her job. She couldn't no longer focus more than 10 hours a week. And
wow.
within 2 months, she was on her feet. Extraordinary. Her dad cried and said, "My girl, you're back." This is a beautiful story
Mm,
on the podcast. Another one, a lot more related to women in this age category. So Jessica was 27 when this happened. Is a story of Wendy. Wendy had twin sons, and she was suffering from migraine disease. And whenever it would happen, she would call her husband. They had a code to say, "You have to come back. The twins are no longer safe with me. I'm incapacitated, debilitated to the point my children, I can't supervise them." And so
mm,
she'd go in bed for 3, 4 days, and the house would be silent. And her husband, Patrick, who comes on the podcast as well, we did a podcast strictly with him to hear how does he feel. It was the first time they were communicated. He said, look, it was awful. Like, the house was silent. The twin boys, they wanted their mum. I had no answer to provide to them. And I had all of the house chores plus my job plus the boys. It was really frustrating.
sure.
And and I felt guilty. I felt guilty I couldn't help her, and she felt guilty. And so the house would be dead silent. And they went through that for 20 years. And they said, we prayed so much, and we prayed to find an answer, and
Yeah.
we feel you're the answer to my prayers. I'm like, I needed my
Oh,
time to come. I also had my life journey that decided to push me in this direction.
oh, wow.
Beautiful. Or Samantha, I'll just mention that one last. Samantha is a journalist. She was having sort of headaches her entire life, but she was sort of not really paying attention. And then when she hit perimenopause, they became completely debilitating, full on vertigo, dizziness, incapacity to work. She could no longer focus in front of a computer. It lasts for 2 or 3 years. She was recommended to me a couple of times, but she said, I've tried, at least 5 neurologists everywhere in the globe, and no one's fixed this, so I don't think she can. But then a lot of people said, no, it happened for me and it worked. And so
Mm.
she came and she's like, I cannot believe it, but yes, you pulled it off. And so it's just another
Mm.
beautiful
Oh,
story.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. Can
Mm.
like in her situation, can you give us some insight
I
exactly what did she do? Without,
Yeah, sure, sure.
without
It's
breaking the confidence of a patient relationship. Yeah. Was
Yeah,
there?
a bit related to what we were discussing before.
Mm-hmm.
Is when you go through perimenopause, your liver system is changing in nature, and unless you find a way to make it work, and some of its substance, life substance, and its production is less and less, and so women will recognize this because they will start to suffer from, in general, around perimenopause, women will start to have a bit more dry bowel movements, like constipation chronically.
Okay.
And when you think of your vagus nerve and you're constipated, the your brain is also dehydrated, but from
Mm.
with a very deep level. And we call it dehydration in English. I think there's a word missing. We're not. We can call it defatted or D omega 3 or D.
Uh,
It's that doesn't
Okay.
have that
Wow.
nurture, that moisture, and so you have to fix some of that, and
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 that
then it
was, yeah, that tended
yeah
to be, yeah. So
yeah
that was her root. So that's where it
yeah
was rooted for her.
yeah,
Wow.
rooted.
Wow.
And so that's why you see it quite a lot in perimenopause with women who will have something called Meniere's disease, vertigo, dizziness. I
Mm-hmm.
also think something quite prevalent with type 1 diabetes has to do with inner ear disorders. I would still
Mm.
qualify in that same category because it's that you use the same methodology to solve for that. Is where's the inner ear disorder coming from, and how may I fix it? And
Yeah.
this is where there's still a difference between the East and the West. In the West, we give a nutrient for its absolute nutrition value. In the East, you look at where does the food go? Where does it go? Like if you
Mm.
take it, does it go in your ear canal or does it go in your large intestine? These are two very
Mm-hmm.
different destinations.
Wow. Wow.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It is. I
That
think, you
is
know what? We have a long way to go still,
still a
on
lot of studying and researching, and yeah.
on the
Yes.
body mysteries. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate, I see how passionate you are about what you get to do. And I really appreciate you coming in and sharing all this with
Yeah.
all of us. Is there a tip, maybe a quick tip that you can leave? So the ladies in our audience, our
Yeah.
listeners are generally type 1. And if this triggered some interest in them in learning more, definitely going to send them to your show, and so they can check out the
Yeah.
Heroes app and the podcast. But maybe a few things that they can kind of walk
Yeah.
away with to give them hope. I know
Yeah.
chances are they're here
Completely.
because they have suffered from migraines and they were hoping to learn the reason why. But I think connecting with you is going to be their first step.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There's definitely one thing that they can add. I love adding. I don't like removing so much. I mean, removing is important, but it's nice to put the brain on what to do, what not to do. And
Hmm.
there's an amazing infusion I do a lot in that age category, which can help, is a chamomile and goji berries infusion. Um,
Mm.
Chamomile is a food, and feverfew in particular, that has been proven in 1985 in scientific articles to be able to help with migraines, and it's been
Mm.
proven over and over again since then. But in the study, this is really weird when we give this to women. if maybe 40% don't have migraines, or I can't remember the exact stats, but they say a vast majority start to have diarrhea. And the reason is because chamomile is really cold in nature, quite cool. So it's cooling the digestive tract. So alone, it's not a great way to go. You can go chamomile alone if you have a lot of anger, a lot of quite your population would never go with that, like a very toxic lifestyle, or
Gotcha.
toxic relationship. But if you pair it with goji berries, the goji berries, they will warm the beverage because they're neutral in
Oh, okay.
temperature,
Mm-hmm.
and they will also stimulate and detox the liver while doing a few other things. And so I find that a chamomile and goji berries infusion at night is really wonderful. I will add a few buts. Rule number one is it's 8 to 10 goji berries a day. It's very, very potent as a food, and you don't need more. Again, we want to fill the bucket. We don't want to overflow it. The second thing
Okay.
is, if you, in addition to have type 1 diabetes, I don't think you would have that, but you're on a FODMAP diet for IBS. I don't think it would be a situation that we will encounter, but okay, let's not exclude it.
Right.
Then
Understood.
this beverage would make you bloated because it contains fructan. If it's the
Okay.
case, if it makes you bloated, anything that makes you bloated, don't push it. Okay, your body's saying no. So if you're on a FODMAP diet, if you are pregnant, I wouldn't recommend chamomile in particular. Goji berries are fine. Then you just do the goji berries alone, and that's it really, for the contraindication. So pregnancy and IBS FODMAP diet.
Okay. Really good. That's a fun tidbit. So, and just to clarify, you said chamomile.
Yes,
Okay, I wanted to
yes.
make
Sorry.
sure. Okay, I
Yeah,
love your
absolutely,
accent, but I wanted to
absolutely.
clarify because we are very familiar. I mean, I do a chamomile tea. Actually, I like a chamomile lavender at night sometimes.
Oh,
But the
very nice.
goji, I definitely understand the goji. You hear a little bit about it, but I like that you given us a little bit more weight on
Yeah,
using goji berries. But it, like you say, don't overdo, right?
yeah. Don't
And a lot of,
overdo it.
yeah,
Yeah,
less is more. And yeah, just seeing how your body responds first. So those are interesting tips. Really good. And of course,
yeah,
they can find out more when they connect with you
yeah,
on your app.
yeah.
And well, thank you so much, Diane, for being here today. You are a
With
world
so
of
much pleasure.
information. Yes. And we'll be sure to link all of your information right here in the show notes. People can reach out, learn more, ask
Yeah,
questions, and
we're
connect with you on
really
your
here.
app.
Yeah, we're really here to help. It's awful to live a life like that. And for
Yes,
anyone, we've helped even people who are 78 years old. It's still 100% of your life.
absolutely right.
Just
Never too late to
cherish
feel
it.
good.
I want to go back to what you were saying at the beginning, which is you are not born to lead a life in pain.
That's right.
That's not what
That's
you're
right.
meant to be doing.
That's right.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Well, thanks again. And we appreciate, and please share this show. Chances are listeners here, whether or not you have experienced or are currently experiencing migraines, you know somebody who is. So please share the show, share Diane with them, and yeah, be well. And we'll be
Yeah.
back in here next week. Bye for now. Okay. Strange. They did a oh, there we go. Stop recording. There